this is David Stark from WatcherPass.com, your website for movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Today I'm joined by Kurtis David Harder, the director of the all-new Shudder original, Spiral. It's a tense story of dread and madness that also stars Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman, Ari Cohen, and Jennifer Laporte. It's available to stream on Shudder right now, so you can check it out right before or after this interview. We're going to talk to Kurtis in just a second, but first let's check out that trailer.
It's my first night there. I see this guy, and I was terrified. You're dead. Saying that. Believe me, choosing to live your life loud and proud is about the bravest thing you can do in this world.
My robot's pretty good.
He's
Hey Kurtis, can you hear me?
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Dude.
Thank you so much for joining me. I know you're busy probably promoting this film, so thanks for taking the time.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll just I know that we have limited time, so I'll just get right into the questions. This is such an interesting story. Like I love the setting. I love the characters. So I guess, where did you find this? Had you worked with a writer before? Or is this something that kind of, I don't know, fell across your desk? I'm not sure exactly how you find movies these days.
Yeah. It was my first time directing something that wasn't something I wrote. It was written by Colin Minahan and John Poliquin. Colin I've produced a bunch of movies with. So I'd produced What Keeps You Alive that he directed. And then the two of us had produced movies for another director named Brandon Christensen. So we did Stillborn and Z. And we're kind of like a group of directors, creatives that kind of all produce for each other and kind of, you do a movie, I'll do a movie type of thing. And Spiral I really connected with, and Colin and John trusted me to direct it. So that's kind of how that all came to be.
That is awesome. I know that must have been tough, not having full control over the film, or at least maybe having like the vision that you had writing and then translating that into the director's seat. So, I guess, how different was that? And, were there any changes that, you made after reading the script? Was it always in the 90s? Did it always have these protagonists, things like that? Or?
Yeah, some of the core script was really strong. It was great to kind of have Colin and JP. They were there during the whole production, so it was nice to kind of be able to kind of jump ideas around with them. But yeah, in prep we were kind of developing and discussing kind of character motivations and different scenes of how do these things, but the core messaging and that was always the same. Jeffrey, who's the lead actor, actually had some history. He was as a black man adopted into a white family and grew up in a town pretty close from where we shot the film in Alberta, Canada. So he brought a lot of levity to kind of the role, and it was kind of able to kind of put some personal experiences into the character and really connect with the scene. So that was really cool as well.
That is awesome. It must have been, it must be a weird kind of push and pull. It must be a sense of comfort having that familiarity, but then also, maybe he's looking back on some of his youth with a different perspective now, and especially in the light of this film. So that's lucky, but also
yeah, it must to dive kind of back into that, but yeah.
And I love that this movie, it had a lot of dread and a lot of I guess psychological elements, not kind of your traditional horror gore. Was that something that you liked about this film, or is that something that's always been a part of this script?
Yeah, I think it was definitely part of the script in terms of kind of building that sense of dread and kind of mistrust from kind of an unreliable narrator who's kind of going into descent of kind of create like this kind of this episodic thing. So for me, I mean, I really love atmospheric horror, stuff that kind of just builds that sense of dread within the audience, and kind of going for kind of building up to a culmination of when you start to reveal what's really going on. is it really happening, or is this just all in Malik's head? Is kind of what we were really trying to achieve of how can we build up that balance of mistrust.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so interesting because, at some point you kind of introduce more of those aspects, and then you start to question everything, which is such a, tough,
Yeah.
but also, enjoyable spot to be in as a viewer.
Yeah, find that balance. Yeah. So hopefully we found kind of that good mix of what we're trying to find that balance. Yeah.
And you mentioned atmospheric horror. One of the things I really liked about this movie, and a lot of actual horror I've noticed recently, CG is kind of one of my pet peeves, and I think atmospheric horror has a better likelihood of not having, going all out on effects and having things be more subtle and feel more real. Is that something that you always try to do? Is it just how this script worked for you, and is it something that maybe your background in music videos and other films has kind of prepared you for?
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I can do something practically, I always want to. CG is a great tool, but you shouldn't rely on it, would be kind of my perspective. So anything we can do with kind of like the special effects, makeup and stuff, if we can do it for real, then obviously that's our goal. And then it's kind of just adding on to CG should be kind of like that polish that you can kind of take things to the next level. So I'm not sure. Yeah. Anything else? I'm trying to think of what.
No, it's a long question. You can kind of pick and choose what you want. The other thing I really loved is, I love the 90s. Not to be mean, but did you have like a 90s consultant? Because you kind of were, your career is amazing for your age, but it's just the 90s are probably not something that you remember much. Although maybe you do. Maybe
I remember enough. It was really cool to. We had a really great production designer, Matt Carswell, who brought a lot to it. So the main house was an empty house that we decked from the ground up. So everything we brought in, kind of everything, and so we would kind of bounce ideas of like what kind of stuff. But it was cool walking around the house and being like, I used to have this exact fridge when I was 5 or whatever. But yeah, and I think like it was definitely nice to have kind of some different voices. Matt really did his research in terms of making sure everything was of the time.
So is Matt where the props are? I mean, I have my throwback 90s shirt. I've got my CDs here just to prepare for this interview. Is Matt where you got a lot of the props? I mean, the tube TVs, the house was fantastic, and like you said, the refrigerator looked authentic. Everything kind of felt like we were transported back.
Yeah, so that was definitely something that we spent a lot of time in prep and kind of building up the house of making sure everything was period appropriate. It was fun. I really enjoyed going back to the 90s. Has a really cool aesthetic. Feels like most of my favorite movies were from kind of like the late 90s, where you had like the Jacob's Ladder and the kind of Seven and all those films they're kind of building up that sense of dread, but kind of timeless in a weird way.
Yeah. Especially if you kind of say in a small town, you kind of, you can forgive some of the lack of technology and whatnot. So It kind of feels just like any other story, except with some really cool old tech. I don't know if you read the review, but a noticeable smile came on my face when I saw him using narrow burning wrong, because that's something I used a lot. I was a nerd when I was a kid, and so I use it all the time. I hadn't thought about it in 20 years. And there it was.
It's fun in the weird little things that when you're on set, you're like, oh yeah, this little item. I haven't thought about something like this for so long.
Exactly.
So that was fun.
So you mentioned that Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman kind of came on and had maybe a similar background. How did you find him? Did he kind of read the script and connect as you expect he probably did? And I guess some of the other cast. How'd you kind of assemble this cast for this film?
Yeah. So he was a long-term friend of John Poliquin, and knew Colin. He'd actually acted in a Carly Rae Jepsen video that never got released that Colin directed. So they kind of went back quite a ways.
Wait, exclusive. There's a Carly Rae Jepsen video that hasn't been released. Can we find that?
Long time ago. I think this was like, I don't even know when, like over 5 years ago.
We need to find that and release that.
It might have got leaked somewhere.
Okay.
But Colin Minahan directed that one, and Jeffrey plays the love interest to Carly. Is pretty funny. But yeah, so Colin and JP had sent the script to Jeffrey just to kind of get some feedback, and Jeffrey was like, "This should be a black protagonist. Like this should be a person of color." And it then kind of after that, we offered the role to him, and he accepted. And I think he definitely brought a lot to the role, and kind of the kind of the experience, like from him growing up in a small town, I think was invaluable.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a strange realization when I saw this film because you know I don't think of horror as necessarily not progressive. I feel like it's kind of just in that middle ground where kind of anything goes. But it was really refreshing to see a diverse gay couple as the protagonist in the film, and it kind of struck me that I don't think I see that much in horror. So is that you know something that appealed to you when you were making this film, or did it just kind of feel right given how it works in with the story and whatnot?
Yeah, so I mean, when John and Colin really wrote it as kind of a response to the Trump election in 2016, that was when kind of the idea started to form. And I think it was interesting to kind of look at horror films, and it's hard to find a movie that has two gay male leads in the role. In kind of like a typical setup, you have a family moving to a small town. Like the setup is has been used tried and tried again, but you don't ever see it with this kind of like non-traditional family. So that was really cool. I think there was a moment on set where the three of us were looking at the monitor, and then it was Ari Cohen's first scene. And it was kind of that scene where they're in the kitchen talking about Kayla, and they share this kiss. And we watched that, and it was kind of like, it was definitely kind of a moment of realization of like, oh, why don't we see this more? Why is this? It feels like even though it should be common, there's not a lot of these movies being made.
Yeah, it felt strangely, monumental is the wrong word because it didn't feel but it was something I noticed, which is odd because it is kind of should be more commonplace nowadays. And so, without getting into spoilers, it felt like this film had, two or three endings. Was it always written that way, or was that just kind of, maybe you ended filming and then you're like, okay, wait, we need to have some more scenes or whatnot.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of debate and prep about whether or not we go it's yeah, I don't know, I don't want to say too much, but it's not the happiest ending, but there's a sliver for me. What was really important is kind of giving a sense of hope. I think the movie is definitely about kind of the cycles of bigotry and blaming kind of a marginalized group for the problems of society. And I don't think it's a problem that I don't think we're ever going to fully get over, but I think we can always continue to improve and get better. And that was a big thing for me going into the film of kind of exploring, well, it's going to be hard. It's going to be messy. We didn't want to just paint it with some kind of a happy ending. We wanted it to feel real and grounded. So I think going the direction that we did was important to me, but giving it that hope of kind of where the movie goes in kind of that finale. But there was a lot of discussions of how could we make Malik kind of triumph? Is that a smart move? Or kind of like with what happened with Get Out, I think they had a downer ending originally, and then the studio kind of changed it to be, from my understanding, the ending was a reshot thing. So for us, it was kind of sticking to the guns. I only use that because we get compared to Get Out all the time. But yeah, I think for me, it was kind of exploring something that is a really big issue in our culture, especially now. I think it's even more relevant than when we shot it. That it's going to be a lot of hard work, and there's going to be a lot of sacrifices that we generationally have to make so that the next generation can get better. Definitely. But I think we're on the right trajectory. I think it's a lot better than the 90s. We're still struggling with a lot of things, but we're getting there.
Yeah, true story. Although you could also, depending on the town, you could just transplant this, update the technology, and it could be a very similar story.
I think there's probably a lot of towns, especially right now in America, that wouldn't be that far off.
So I just wanted to check. Do you have like a time commitment or like a?
No, I'm good. I thought this was actually later, so this worked out perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So I've just got a couple quick questions. So Now I'm just going to transition now into the I call it the lightning round. It's just very lightweight questions about the film or characters, and see how they relate to you. You can answer as much or as little as you want, and it should be relatively quick. So,
Cool.
uh,
Yeah.
so first question: what's the smallest town you lived in?
I lived in a Bible college town, actually, in Saskatchewan. That was like, I think when it had students, it was a couple thousand, and when there was students, it was like less than 1,000 people, I think. So
That must have been a very interesting experience.
it was pretty wild. I got out of that, thankfully.
What's the worst dinner party you've been to?
The worst dinner party. Oh
It could
man,
be
I
party
don't
party,
know.
but the dinner parties are prominently featured. So
Dinner party. Um, I'm totally blanking.
you're not
Yeah,
old enough for dinner
I'm not sure.
parties.
I have dinner parties, but I'm trying to remember a bad one. They've been relatively good, I think, overall.
That's
I'm
excellent
not
to
sure.
hear. What's the strangest thing you've ever found in the house?
Strangest thing I've ever found in the house. Well, I'm not good at these. I'm totally blanking. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay. The next question was the strangest thing you found in the attic. So, I mean, I guess that's technically in the house, but I wasn't sure if there was something weirder in the attic. The attic always seems like a weird place.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Uh, how long do you think you could go without eating?
Without eating, I,
Yeah.
I've always had it. I've always had kind of that where I forget to eat. So I've definitely done a, a day or two before in the past. So
Oh,
probably a
wow.
good amount of time.
That
But
is a good amount of time. Wow.
yeah,
That's
I
yeah.
remember I've gotten better, but for the first few sets, I would always lose like 10, 15 pounds by the end of it. It was crazy because I would
Uh,
just forget to eat when you're working. So it's
so
so
you're making
probably a good amount of time.
yeah, no, you're making a movie and also making a diet video at the same
Yeah,
time. It's impressive.
I mean, for me, I'm already slender enough, so it's not definitely not the best, but yeah, that's something I've gotten better at over the years.
What's the strangest thing you've ever seen a neighbor do?
Oh, we had a really weird neighbor who would watch us through the window constantly and look for things to call the city about. It. He never liked us much. So there is kind of some parallels there.
Yeah,
So he would always call the city and like if we were building something or like we were building a garage in the backyard once and he would always call and then people would show up and it'd be like a millimeter off and we'd have to change it. My dad was super frustrated.
not happy with
um,
that.
but we would always see him in the window just watching, so that was very strange. He's obviously very bored.
Yeah, yeah, I guess you need something to do.
Yeah.
What's your best piece of 90s memorabilia?
Oh, piece. I don't own a lot of things anymore, so I would say probably these. When I used to go to Pizza Hut and they would have these Star Wars pogs that I kept along for a long time. They were doing this like thing. It was like episode 1 or whatever, pog things. That was
That's
probably yeah.
amazing. Pogs, that's something that was missing
Yeah, I
from the
remember.
movie.
Yeah, yeah. We didn't have pogs. We should have had pogs in the film.
And what's your oldest piece of memorabilia?
Oldest piece of memorabilia. I think I still have my. I don't know about. Yeah, like I said, I don't own that much stuff anymore. I live very on the road.
That's the way to do it.
I think probably Pokemon cards in storage somewhere, but I'm trying. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that'd probably be.
Should check the value of those. I bet they've
Yeah,
gone up a lot.
they've gone up. Yeah,
Well, awesome. That's all the questions I have. So thank you so much for joining me and for your time. And
absolutely.
the film is Spiral. It's out on Shudder right now. You can go check it out, and you might want to watch it a couple times because there's a lot of questions because it deals with madness and dread and just this interesting cycle and this wonderful diverse cast. So
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
All right. Later.
Take care. Bye. That was Kurtis David Harder, the director of the all-new Shudder original Spiral. It's available to stream on Shudder right now, so if you haven't seen it already, you should definitely check it out and maybe watch it again with some of the insights from this interview. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a lot. And as always, go to watcherpass.com for all your movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Thank you.